Hey guys, Vanessa here with Paradox. Oops, just kidding. Vanessa here, alcoholic. Sobriety date's October 8th, 2017. And I'm just going to keep making these weird little videos that have really nothing to do with anything. I just feel compelled to share. So something that I always work on with my sponsees is this idea of spiritual growth, right? Like the big book talks about constantly that we can maintain our recovery if we are constantly trying to grow spiritually. Like our entire recovery depends on spiritual growth and the maintenance of our spiritual condition. And so this is something that I take to heart. This is, I think, what the heart of the big book is. A lot of people like to make it a religion. A lot of people like to make it like this cult thing or all these rules. And it's like, that's just humans imposing their ego on a solution that they're too afraid to try. I think in a lot of ways is what people's resistance to AA is. And it's very small-minded. It's actually what, and it's not, there's a lot of like Christian conversation in it, a lot of language around that. And then there is a lot of it exempting it from the Christian religion and it's saying, but you can believe what you want, right? And I think that that's fine. I think what they're ultimately trying to get to and what the source that we should all be getting to is like this idea of a greater power. And one of my biggest mentors, who was dead by the time I got to BBA, but his name is Mark Houston, and he made a big impact on the Big Book Awakening and AA community, was he would say, it doesn't, this greater power is God, right? But it's not the God name. It is the power between me and this, whatever you want to call it. Some people call it universe, some people call it Jesus. You can call it what you want. What's important is that you're tapping into this power that's in between you and that you understand that you're not the greatest power to exist. And I stand by that because I don't feel like I feel like anytime that I've made decisions that were based entirely on self, it has led me in my limited experience and what is currently in front of me. It always leads me somewhere I don't want to go. And so I say all of that to say that I still believe strongly in spiritual growth. And so spiritual growth to me right now, however, is looking and feeling a little bit differently than I had imagined, which tends to be the case with anything spiritual, is that it's somehow taking you down these roads that you don't expect it to. To get into kind of like more of my like faith and kind of like what I believe in, like I was raised Catholic. I always felt a very strong connection to God. I never really struggled too much, but with this power existing that kind of connects and binds all of us in some way that I can't, well, I don't want to say, I can see it every day. I can see it in my life. I can see it in others' lives, but I guess, and then it's tangible, right? I've always felt that just inherently within me that there's something there. I've never really understood what that relationship, what my relationship, what its relationship to us is. Is it apathetic? Is it just the creator and then negligent? Is it just, is it, has it removed my free will and everything is already preordained and orchestrated? I've never really understood it. Oh, and then is it just, like I'm seeing a lot of injustices in the world. What does that God have to do with that, And so what I eventually settled on as I went through and right even in the middle of my addiction, I was dating somebody who actually introduced me to a church in San Diego, which I got very into and which I still think is an amazing church. I really appreciate their message. It's very welcoming and loving, and it's fun, and it's very applicable to your day-to-day life. It's not this very, I think what people would ordinarily think of a Christian mega church. It's not like that. And so it gave me a place to really, plant myself into Christianity, into developing and understanding my relationship to this power, to this God. And this relationship to what I then understood to be Jesus, right? And so it's interesting because as soon as I really really felt this connection, as soon as I really surrendered to and accepted and wanted to believe in this connection, miraculous things happened. Like I was constantly blessed, like left and right, like the most like things that I cannot even describe to you would begin to happen. And not just like, I mean, me being here today with my alcohol problem that I used to have is just evidence of that. But also just like, I mean, my entire life essentially has been created off of this belief that something greater than me loves me and cares about me and is watching out for me. And the things that didn't work out for a reason. And the things that are working out for a reason. And it has nothing to do with my worthiness or lovability. They just are. And my belief and my faith in that is what powers that, right? It's like this very cool um reciprocal relationship of energy, this exchange, and exchange my faith for the miracles, right? And it's proven time and time again to be effective. And I can look back at times, even through some of my most difficult times, even times when I've lost a lot of people in a short amount of time, even when I was traumatized for certain periods of time, even when I was in deep depressions, I can look back at those times and be like, I still see that power there. I still see myself being able to manage things the best that I could have. And then God came in and picked up the rest. And got me to, again, even being here, because I just realized recently that a lot of people don't, I guess, I don't know how to say this without being super morbid. A lot of people don't consider the exit as often as I have in the past. And I like, you know, a lot of people haven't thought about exiting life as often as I have. And to me, like the door is always there, right? Like it is always there. I don't think about it as often as I used to, but I just know that it's there. If something, and I can't imagine, nor do I want to know under what circumstances I will look at that door again, but I know that it's there. I guess some people never really consider that, but I kind of lived a lot of my life right in the doorway. And now that's just, I'm actually right in the center of the room, like I want to be where the party's at. I want to be where the life is at. I want to be where the joy is, where the connection is, where the love is. And I appreciate that about myself now. Something about spiritual growth is that I felt like even during this most recent period of just like kind of hitting a wall with my growth, and like, as an addict, I do want to have that perpetual sense of like a high, right? And I kind of just felt like maxed out. I don't know how to say this without sounding completely dumb, but I felt maxed out in my relationship with Christ, right? And so I'm like, where do I go from here? Where do I go? I throw everything to Christ, and Christ is like, you can have it, you can have it, you can have it. Everything that I wanted, everything that I didn't, it turns out I didn't want, it wouldn't be a good fit for me, is gone. I don't have to worry about it. It's not a distraction anymore. It's not an obsession anymore. I just feel so free, and I feel joyous, and I feel good. And again, I just have to emphasize what a miracle that is from where I was even 10 years ago, where I was constantly eyeing that exit door and drunk, trying to stumble my way into it. So all of that to say, like I've been, praying. I still doing my meditation. I'm still doing my practices, but it feels very like, not, I don't want to say meaningless, but there's not a ton of passion behind it, right? Because I'm just kind of like, I'm just going through the motions at this point. I just know that this is the thing that I have to do. And so I've been praying for some type of like new relationship, some type of like newer connection, something like that, right? And I got turned on to the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And I got turned on to that right at the same time that I was starting to read Kathleen Hanna's autobiography. And she's like, if nobody knows, she's like this punk feminist. She was in Bikini Kill, La Tigra, the Julie Ruin. Like, I'm a huge fan of her since I was like 14 years old. And there's something about her and her story that I was like, this is how we should do the things, because she just started the entire movement, which she now sees was pretty flawed, but there's just kind of this cool whole like punk subculture thing that I've always been very attracted to, but also with the intention of making a better world, and helping others. And so that's always been very cool to me, and also very artsy and creativity. And there's a lot of power in that too. And so I started reading her autobiography, really great, by the way. I encourage you to read it. And now I'm trying to understand like how, my spirituality comes in place. And so then this book, I actually don't really know, I'm not entirely sure how it came to me, but I saw this book, Mary Magdalene, and I was like, oh, I need to check it out. So I started reading that. And I was very turned on to this whole idea of like, this actually makes sense. Like it was like the last puzzle piece, really, which is not really, I'm sure there's a ton of missing puzzle pieces for me intellectually and spiritually, but this was a puzzle piece that I hadn't really been able to figure out as part of Christianity, which is like, we're raised to think that, you need to have a mother and a father, and that we all have this divine masculine and feminine energies within us. And I'm just thinking, there's always this balance, but Jesus was very much a singular figure. And I was like, I just felt like the story could have been better. Like the story could have been complete if there was like a woman involved, right? And I guess his mother Mary, was part of that, but it just felt like there wasn't really a good roadmap for relationships or like other partnerships that were beyond just friendships, right? And so if you know me, you just know in real life, and I'm working on this. I would like to get more in touch, and maybe this is part of it, is I've never really been in touch nor really drawn to like the romance of relationships. Like to me, I think every relationship is romantic, because every relationship has the potential for me to show love and to receive love. And I've always been confused by people who make romantic relationships like the focus of their lives. And I think that there's something like inherently beautiful about that in another way, though, right? Because it's like people are feeling that there's this sense of deeper connection that they need to be experiencing with somebody else. And I have always felt like I can have that from, and don't take this the wrong way, but like from several people. Like I feel fulfilled by so many people, like having deep connections with a lot of people. And that's very fulfilling to me. But of course, in the times where I've had like healthy partnerships and relationships, that was also very satisfying and fulfilling. I've just have never made that like the center of my life, I guess. Probably because I was an alcoholic for most of my life. So um, anyhow, so all of that to say that I was like, okay, so then I got tapped into that, and I'm reading that, and it gets very like metaphysical. Like one of the questions it's asked is like, she asked Jesus, like, what is matter? And like, what is sin? And it just kind of like blows my mind that this was like removed from the Bible, right? Of course, we understand the Bible was just kind of curated by a bunch of men who wanted power, et cetera, et cetera. And so I've been reading more and more about it, and it continues to both diverge and then return me to this point that I've always had about Christianity, which is that there's this divine power within each of us, because we're all created from God. We're all of God. And people around me, you can't escape a conversation with me without hearing me say that, like, well, you have that divinity within you. Like, we're all divine. Like, we all have this within us. This beautiful, wild and holy essence exists in all of us. And it's powerful. And it comes from God. And so that has always been part of my conversation. And I've always been able to kind of like translate you always hear like about manifestation and quantum leaps and timelines and all this stuff, and like horoscopes and astrology. And like I can kind of marry the two. Like I can make them like work together, but I've always kind of like opted out of that language. I think it's fun. But there's always also something that to me seemed a little bit dark about it also, right? And why choose darkness ever, right? Like I'm here unless, and there's times to get into it, like when you're working on shadow work or, and I would consider shadow work, for example, is an AA doing the 12 steps. The fourth step is a lot of shadow work, actually. And looking at our side of it and like where our perceptions kind of altered our realities in ways that were skewed and kept us separated from other people. But there was always a bit of a darkness I didn't like. It seemed like a wild variable that I didn't um want to participate in exactly, or even welcome into my life. And so staying safe with Jesus and that kind of God concept has always been very comforting to me, and it continues to provide me comfort. Um, and so reading Mary Magdalene in her relationship with Jesus and the conversations that she was having about matter and like where energy goes to and comes from, and just all of these, it kind of really resonated with me again. So I'm like, yeah, I already knew this. Like I have this inner knowing of this. Um, I'm, but there is such a release from Jesus of like, so this is all within each of you. Everyone has this. And I'm like, yes, I know this, but also it comes from you too, right? Like there's still like this part of me that's desperately clinging to this idea that like Jesus is still um the creator of it. God is still the creator of it. Holy Spirit is all part of it, right? But from what I'm understanding and how I'm reinterpreting this is like maybe Jesus was the savior because he's actually turning us on to this greater concept of finding that power within each of us. And it's still, I understand that. And it's also very scary. And I have been journaling a lot about this. You can actually see my journal in the background. And I think that the fear behind that is it's the R word, not that one. It is this idea of responsibility, because there is an awful lot of responsibility to be found within myself then, if that is the case, if all this power exists within me and I have all that power to create this life that I do or I don't want, then that means I have to accept responsibility for where I am in life. And like clearly when things are going well and I am happy, I will accept that responsibility. But what happens when things were not going well? And, so it's like, was that all just a manifestation of what I was going through? In a lot of ways, everybody's energy intersects with everybody else's. What's mostly important is how I manage that within myself, right? The narratives that I tell myself about what's happening around me and how much, again, responsibility I take for where I want to go from there. And I've never been a fan of like blaming externals or even my past. You will rarely, besides of the alcoholism, you will rarely hear me say, it's because of this that now I have this. You can and that it's not going to change. I'll always be that way. Like I feel like there are a million different versions of Vanessa that can exist on a day-to-day basis, let alone for the rest of my life. I don't think anything is set in stone as far as what I can and can't do. And I feel like that's the same for everybody else. Everybody has the capacity to change if they are willing and they want to accept responsibility for it, right? And I just don't like that word, and I want to do some work. Or maybe just it's a surrendering to that, understanding that there is a responsibility that I need to take for certain things in my life if I really want them to change, which is the magic of the 12 steps is step one, we really understood that our life had become unmanageable in the way that we had been managing it and that there was an actual problem. And so I think acceptance of that is always going to be the key. I don't know what that means for my relationship with the Christian church is going to be, because I still find that to be incredibly important. It's given me, if nothing else, at least a structure for how to worship, for how to um, operate in the world, for that sense of divinity that exists within me with or without my consent. And I think that's beautiful because then I can also see it in other people. And that's the core part of what I am working with here that I want to keep from my Christianity, that I see also translates into this, I don't know what to call it yet. I don't know just this idea of like being conscious of that, I guess, right? Um, what I'm realizing comes up as a a point of like resistance is that like I liked that comfort of knowing that I was loved, or that I am loved, and that I'm worthy of love regardless of what I do, because it comes from this God idea, right? Which is this all-knowing, of all loving. I guess I just kind of pictured God as a him still, and as somebody to give that to me. But the more that I think about it, that would have to come from an internal source, right? If that divine part of loving, like, this is self-love 101, then. Like, I have to truly believe through and through that I am lovable, and that I am worthy of this love. And there is still, I'm really surprised to say it, but I'm really humbled to say it too. There's still some resistance. I intellectually, I think, understand that. But I think, like, on a molecular level, I'm learning that. And I don't know. It's so weird. I also, by the way, I know a lot of people feel like they need to do psychedelics to really begin to ponder their existence on this earth and their interconnectedness to everything else around them. You really don't. You just need to have a conversation with me, and we can talk about existence and love and consciousness, and help me figure it out. And I really encourage everybody to learn more about Mary Magdalene. Her story is very important, very important. And it's been largely left out of the Christian church, unfortunately. So if you get the chance to read about the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, I think everybody would be very interested in that. I think that's all. This has no conclusion, because I just want to say that I'm so confused, and I keep part of my, I think I'm shedding this identity as a member of a Christian church, while still acknowledging this relationship to Christ and God, while also acknowledging that perhaps that thing that I've been calling God this entire time is part of this consciousness, this awareness that I want, but that feels so impersonal. Like, I want it to be loving, and I'm understanding that that lovingness needs to come from self, because I am also part of that. This is Vanessa, not on drugs. So if y'all can imagine why I had to stop, I'm sure you can imagine. I'm sure you're all grateful that I'm sober. But anyhow, if you have anything to add to this conversation, even if it's just like, Vanessa, please start taking medications, go ahead and leave me a comment. I'm just curious. Or if you're familiar with the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, please do let me know. I would love to hear about it. And this is just Vanessa having a spiritual growth. And sometimes it's messy, and there's no real conclusion to it. It's just a process. And I'm never ashamed to say that I don't have all the answers. In fact, I kind of love it, even if it's a little destabilizing, even if it's a little uncertain. Maybe I revert back and I say, just kidding, that was a fun little detour, but I am full on Christian now. Or maybe I completely take a left turn or right turn, whatever way. And completely find my spiritual identity in something else. I'm not sure. I don't really think it's that important to put labels on it, if I'm being totally honest, but for my own sake, I just find it interesting. Okay, this has gotten a little bit longer than I anticipated. So I'm actually going to go back to work now and talk to people about their rental homes. So I hope everybody is having a great day, and I'm going to continue to just babble on about who knows what. All right. I love you guys. Goodbye.